Okay, in this lesson here, we're going to be taking a look at parentheses. In the preceding lesson, we indicated that the normal method or sequence of performing problems that have multiple operations within them is to do your powers first, then you multiply and divide next, and then you add and subtract after that. However, if you have a problem that has parentheses in it, you always do what's in the parentheses first, always. Well, what is the purpose for parentheses? Parentheses are used to group things differently so that you perform certain operations or certain portions of a problem first based upon the criteria of whoever created the problem. Because obviously the method or the sequence in which you perform the operations can affect the answer. Well, let's just take a look at this one. This is straightforward, left to right. We're just going to add and subtract from left to right. 21 minus 3 is 18, and 18 plus 6 would be 24. But let's say that I really want to do the 3 plus the 6 first. I can do that by putting them within parentheses. That and this together is a set of parentheses. So now that I've added the parentheses here, we always have to do what's inside it first, and then we can proceed on to the rest of the problem. Well, what is 3 plus 6? That's what's in the parentheses. Well, 3 plus 6 is 9. So I'm just going to cross that out and write a 9. Now, let's do the problem. 21 minus 9. Well, 21 minus 9 is 12. So the parentheses here indicated that we needed to do the 3 plus the 6 first. Let's come down here and take a look at this next problem. We have 16 minus parentheses 2 times 6 minus 3 parentheses equals what? Remember, we always do what's inside the parentheses first. Well, inside the parentheses here, we have a multiplication and a subtraction. What do we do first? Well, we do any powers first. Are there any powers within the parentheses? No. So the next thing we do within the parentheses would be multiply and divide. Well, what's our multiplication part? Well, that's the 2 times the 6. Well, what is 2 times 6? Well, 2 times 6 is 12. So I'm going to cross out that 2 times 6. Now, what do we have left inside the parentheses? Well, what we have left is 12 minus 3. So let's go ahead and subtract that. 12 minus 3 is 9. So I'm going to rewrite this now as 16 minus, and then what's in the parentheses here is 12 minus 3, which is 9. What is 16 minus 9? 16 minus 9 is 7. So even though you have parentheses, if you have multiple operations within the parentheses, you still use the same sequence that we learned in the previous lesson. You do your powers first, then you multiply and divide, then you add and subtract. Then once you're done with the parentheses, you go ahead and do the rest of the problem the same way. Powers first, then multiply and divide, then add and subtract once all your parentheses are gone. They interrelate together. Okay, let's take a look at another situation here. This one's going to involve division. Here we have parentheses. We have 6 plus 8 in parentheses divided by parentheses 4 minus 2. Well, we do what's inside the parentheses first. But before we do what's inside the parentheses, I'm actually going to rewrite the question here. I'm not going to perform any of the operations. I'm just going to rewrite this particular math problem. I'm going to put parentheses 6 plus 8 parentheses. Now remember from a few lessons ago in algebra, even though this is a legitimate division symbol, in algebra, what is the most often used or the primary way that we represent division? Well, we do it with a fraction bar. So I'm going to come here and replace this division sign here with a fraction bar. Then what's going to go in our denominator in the bottom? Well, this is the parentheses 4 minus 2. So all I've done at this point is I've rewritten parentheses 6 plus 8 divided by parentheses 4 minus 2, and I've done it by putting 6 plus 8 parentheses on top my numerator of my fraction, and then I've put 4 minus 2 into the denominator. I'm going to take that one step further. What we're going to do here is actually replace or erase now the parentheses, because in our top number, in our numerator for our fraction here, is everything that's up top within parentheses? Well, yes, it is. The 6 plus the 8 is within the parentheses. Since everything up top here is within the parentheses, we can actually rewrite it without any parentheses. That becomes our top. Now, in our bottom, in our denominator, is everything that's in the denominator, in the bottom, within parentheses? Yes, it is. So we could actually remove those parentheses and rewrite the problem this way. So what we have here now is a division problem. 6 plus 8 divided by 4 minus 2. And it's assumed and implied that even though the parentheses are not written around the 6 plus the 8 here in the numerator, and they're not written around the 4 minus 2 here in the denominator, they are still implied as being there. And the reason why that's important is because our sequence says that you have to multiply and divide before you add and subtract. But since it's implied that our parentheses are there, we go ahead and calculate our numerator, the top part, first. What is 6 plus 8? 6 plus 8 is 14. Now remember, that corresponds to what we had over here. We had parentheses 6 plus 8. Well, parentheses 6 plus 8 is still 14. But it's important to point out right here, because a lot of times in algebra, you are going to see a division problem written like this, and the parentheses are not going to be around the entire numerator, but it's assumed and implied that they are in fact really there, as well as being around the entire denominator. So don't get confused between this setup here and this here. They mean the same thing. Okay, let's take a look at our bottom. Our denominator is 4 minus 2. Well, 4 minus 2 is 2. So we now have 14 over 2. And what's that reduced to, or what does that equal? It equals 7. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Okay then, as a quick review, you always perform the operations that are within the parentheses first. You always perform what's inside the parentheses first. Then when you're done with all the parentheses, you then proceed to the normal order of operations for the remaining part of the problem, which is powers first, multiplication and division second, addition and subtraction last. Okay then, that'll wrap up session 9 on parentheses.